has obtained an internal report issued by the Federal Aviation Administration. The report examines 2 New York area air traffic control centers. The report found that one of the centers is completely mismanaged, seriously understaffed, and is crippled by outdated equipment. For passengers, the report calls into question the very safety of our skies.
The radar system went down, the scope went completely blank, and the frequencies became disabled.
Air traffic controller Ron Andre was on duty at the New York Air Route Traffic Control Center when a circuit breaker tripped. No longer could he see the planes on the radar or talk to the pilots by radio. Topping it off, the backup display system didn't work. Shortly before 6 a.m. on May 25th, the air traffic controllers had lost control.
It means it's a very dangerous situation. There's nothing you can do.
When planes take off at local airports such as JFK, air traffic controllers in the towers hand off direction of the aircraft to controllers at a facility known as TRACON. And after 150 miles, those controllers hand off the planes to controllers at the New York Center in Ronkonkoma.
Champ 1458, flight level 310, Mach point at 0.
The New York Center is responsible for the skies over half a dozen states and most of the Atlantic Ocean. And it was at the New York Center that the FAA found the most serious problems. James Buckles, Assistant Division Manager of the FAA. Wouldn't you acknowledge that the review was fairly scathing?
It certainly called a lot of things to our attention.
It certainly did. The review commissioned by FAA headquarters charges that a lack of leadership has led to a breakdown in the effectiveness and efficiency of the facility. That equipment needs and requirements are neglected and unplanned, and that the current quagmire symbolizes the reprehensible state of affairs in the entire training program.
The limit right now, and it's like I say, the margin of safety is drastically decreasing.
Chris Bond of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association believes travelers should be wary. All the problems at the New York Center did not cause the May 25th outage, but they did cause a potentially dangerous delay in getting the system back up again.
The latest outage that we had was probably the breaking point. The equipment failed. While it was a relatively new piece of equipment that failed, the failure of that piece of equipment also took down the older equipment, and to get it back up became a serious problem.
For the most part, pilots had to fend for themselves as the New York Center struggled for an hour and 15 minutes to get the radios restored and certified. It took 3 long hours to get the radar back and 6 hours to return the system to normal.
The length of time that it took to get the system up was directly brought about by the lack of trained technicians that we had available to fix the equipment.
This equipment is what helps them to do their job. They could have a lot of them working, and if I can't maintain the equipment and keep it operational, they don't have anything.
Gail Sutphin speaks for the Technicians Union. They maintain the roomful of ancient computers which control the radar. They were built so long ago, IBM no longer provides service or parts.
Where the maintenance is getting to be impossible because of lack of parts, lack of trained personnel, and just lack of people who know 70s technology.
People would always say air traffic controller, that's a stressful job, and I would always say it's not the job, it's the people. Now it's not the job, it's the equipment.
It's the equipment and the people. 14 years after most of the nation's air traffic controllers were fired for striking, the facility has just 60% of the number of fully trained air traffic controllers that it needs. It has used 75 partially trained controllers to staff posts rather than complete their training. And it stretches manpower by combining 2 sectors, doubling the amount of airspace a controller must supervise.
In the perfect world, Krista, we'd not do that at all. We would also not have any one-person sectors. I think everyone would agree that ideally we would like to have 2 sets of eyes on every sector. For efficiency's sake and ultimately for safety's sake, that's the best way to go.
One day last week, a record 6,700 planes flew in and out of the New York metropolitan area. This as regional administrators go hat in hand to Washington to try to get mandatory overtime and increased staffing approved. But even if all the manpower problems are addressed, there are no plans to replace the computers upon which the New York Center's air traffic control system is based until the next century.
To have to go to the controllers and say, yes, the replacement for this is on the way, but 1999 or 2000 or 2005.
I don't know how much the FAA will like me saying this, but my thought was, will it take a crash and loss of lives to get the equipment replaced?
Ideally, just as our goal is no errors in the system, no failures, no, we're impatient by nature, and we'd like to see it happen more quickly.
Krista Bradford, News 9,